cast and crew of Dealing, John Lithgow, Barbara Hershey, directed Paul Williams. Hello, hello.
Man, what a trip.
Yes, well, it's been 50 years, so tell me what it's like to see this movie after all this time. Or seeing it for the first time.
Definitely for the first time. If I saw it, I have no memory of it, but what's really scary is I have no memory of doing any of those scenes, except the laughing scene. That one I remember because Robert and I were out of control, and Paul wisely and brilliantly said, use it, just do the scene like that. But that was the only memory I have, no other. I mean, that's really kind of scary.
I will ask you no more questions.
No more questions.
You're done. Okay, you can go home now if you want to. It's okay. How about you, John? This is a gigantic thing for you. This is the first time you were in a movie, correct?
Yes, it was. Not only was it the first time I was in a movie, I had no idea how to act in a movie. Everything was brand new to me. And I think that's why I remember it so vividly.
You were really a stage actor, a Shakespearean actor.
And young at that. I mean, I was only a few years out of Harvard. Paul and I were at Harvard at the same time. We barely knew each other. I had met him once when I was an undergraduate. He was on the Crimson, the Harvard newspaper, and I was a theater. I was doing nothing but theater and acting all the time, much more than I was studying. I do remember meeting Paul at a party in somebody's apartment, off-campus apartment, and I remember you saying to me, "Oh, you're John Lithgow. We like you at the Crimson." And I thought, what an asshole. But I mean, we were all assholes like that. I mean, uncannily, I remind myself in this film of most of the students I went to Harvard. So I didn't remember much about my character. I didn't remember just what a swine he was, nor how funny, comical he was. So I remember seeing the film. I remember it. I was much more impressed with it then than I was back then. I think I was so mortified by the sight of myself in a movie. I just couldn't. I had no perspective on what I was seeing. But it was a wonderful time, and I don't worry, I way outgrew that first impression of Paul, and I was crazy about him. And I thought he was really good in the movie. I forgot that you were in the film.
Yeah, he's in the movie. He's the person talking philosophy in the film.
I have a reaction to the movie, though.
Yeah, tell me.
I thought it was really good, and well, I don't automatically think that when I'm in it, but it was so unique. It wasn't like other movies. I mean, it was of that period.
Yeah.
But for a time capsule movie, sometimes those movies are crippled by the time. You know, you just sort of, that's what they are, they're time capsule movies. I didn't feel that about this, except for the, extraneous stuff in phone booths instead of cell phones and things like that. But basically, it totally felt contemporary to me.
No, it dances to its own tune, too.
Yeah.
I think there's no movie like this.
No.
Actually, talk about how this movie came together. This came, because you were producing, you were making movies with the rest, and you directed a couple movies. But John Calley, I can't believe the president of Warner Brothers actually came to you to try to make this movie. We did one time where Warner Brothers would come to you to make a movie like this.
You want the real story?
Sure. Of course we want the real story.
I was in North Africa with Eldridge Cleaver and the North Koreans planning a kamikaze attack on New York City. And when I came back to New York City, the FBI and all kinds of people were on my tail. And John Calley sent me this book. And he said, well, read it, let me know if you'd like to do it. And I said, I don't have to read it. I'm on a plane. And I went there. I read the book on the plane, and I figured they wouldn't arrest me if I were making a big Hollywood movie. That's the truth. And John Calley, who was head of Warner Brothers, he was friends with Mike Nichols and Stanley Kubrick. He was a very hip guy. And he was saying, well, he's got this boat filled with guns, and you got to remember, these are different times. He's got a boat in the marina filled with guns, and he's got a place in Hawaii, and he's going to just run, at the right moment. And I said, well, actually, the Panthers aren't going to do anything in L.A. It's too spread out. Cops can get to any place too quickly. They're controlled, and they're going to go for concentrated cities. And I think he was so into the whole moment, and I said, fine, I'll do this. I'd love to do this movie, as long as we have enough time to shoot. And he said, okay. And that was how I got into this movie.
That's amazing. Once again, only in 1971. Now,
It's more amazing than the movie.
Gotta make a movie about that.
You can read about it in my memoir.
his book, you have to read his book. It's unbelievable. And actually, this book it said written by Michael Douglas, but it's actually written by Michael Crichton.
Michael Crichton was on the Crimson when I was on the Crimson.
It's hard to believe this book was written by the guy who wrote Jurassic Park.
Right.
Wasn't it written by his brother, his younger brother?
They wrote it together.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I find this as difficult to watch today as I did when we made it. I mean, you two are, I feel the film didn't support, frankly, the wonderfulness of your acting.
Oh, sure.
I did feel that. And that there were, for me, a lot of, it's an old sensibility. The timing of and the pace and the rhythm isn't normal. And there are certain scenes, like when you're in the convertible and the thing goes up and the raid takes place and they drive away. But, we want to see the raid. They just went, or the guy
that's like might be my favorite thing in the freaking movie. I mean, that's so incredibly well directed. They walk to the convertible and there's nothing going on. She says, let's put the top down. He puts the top down, and by the time the top goes down, you realize a police raid is coming, and you're not even playing it up, and you're taking off. I mean, it's impeccably directed. That is a perfectly directed scene. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, working with Barbara was great, because actually, I thought she did have the most wonderful smile in the world in my lifetime.
You actually say a very nice thing in the book about her. You were in the dumps, and you noticed that she always had a great sunny attitude, and you asked her about it one day, and she said, because when I wake up in the morning, I only do things that I want to do. I only do things that I like. And in the book, you claim that actually gave you the sort of like...
Well, it was a revelation. I had never in my life woke up and said, well, what do I really want to do? I have work to do, and I have to do it, and I'm not particularly enjoying it, but I'm going to do a good job. The idea that you can actually do just what you want to do was a revelation to me, and it changed my life. I started doing things. And there was one other thing, too. I had long hair, and she showed me that if she put her head all the way down with a brush, much better.
Now, you mentioned the film has a very loose feel, and this is for all three of you. And I hate to even say this because I'm the screenwriter, and people always come up to you, oh, boy, they must have made up that line, or that was improvisation. But it does have an improvisational feel, and I'm wondering what was in the screenplay, what was kind of made up. I mean, for example, you as playing the piano, you playing a theater director. I, for some reason, can't imagine that actually being in the Crichton novel. So how did this whole thing, how did the whole work, what was it like working on this movie in terms of that?
I can't remember what
Thank God.
Well, there were a couple of people around, David Odell and Stephen Bellow and Paul had written the script, and so that if there were things, bright ideas, we were all. It was, I believe, it was very collaborative. The whole thing of me directing
Characters.
and you also created the world of Harvard. I mean, the lecture.
And Howard Gardner,
Yeah, you got
who was my roommate, and he became the famous Howard Gardner, the educationist, who wrote the book on multiple intelligences, and he became a MacArthur and a renowned author.
And you talking philosophy in a college dorm room, that's what it was like in those days. I defy you to find a portrait of undergraduate life in college in that era, in an Ivy League school, that comes anywhere near what it was really like.
But here's, I have to admit, this is like, I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember I found a young boy, Robert Lyons, for me.
Robert Lyons is the lead in the film.
Yeah,
we
really.
did reach out to. We did try to get
No,
Robert.
I think he's ill, actually, is what the problem is. He's 86 years old, which I also didn't know that he was old enough. But I think that might have been part of the problem. But basically, the ring of Harvard was certainly in you, but I didn't feel particularly that Robert was like a Harvard guy. And we found this young guy. He came in, all the top dealers in the country were coming to see me in my hotel room, they were giving me the best. I was passing out. I couldn't remember anything. And this one kid comes in, and he's incredible. And we start improvising, and you remember this?
Yes, I do.
And I couldn't believe it. I said, the film's going to finally work. If he and Lithgow get together, this will be an amazing film. And I brought him to New York for a week to improvise with you. And we had a great time. I knew the film would be fantastic. And when I came back, Warner Brothers would not hire this unknown Richard Dreyfuss.
I so remember our improvs. In fact, I remember I sort of did a mind game on him by suddenly speaking French to him. And he went berserk. Remember that in the improv? It was great.
I watched you two together for the whole movie. And that really, and in some sense, whenever I watch my movies, there's always been some major casting problem. And which has always taken away something that the film could have been, I know could have been. And so it's always difficult for me a little bit to watch the films. And I made a film called The Revolutionary with Robert Duvall and John Boyd, and they were wonderful. And then I met this actor in Central Park one afternoon, and I wanted him to play the Abby Hoffman character. And this was a guy named Al Pacino, and he was great. He could do Abby Hoffman. The only thing, he was wonderful. And I knew that film, the last act had to be somebody smart who could do the intellectual stuff. And a week before he started shooting, his agent, Stevie Phillips, calls up and says, he won the Tony for Tiger Wears a Necktie. So we don't want him playing second fiddle to John Boyd. I had to get another actor. I got Seymour Cassell, who's a wonderful actor, but couldn't do the intellectual part of the character. Ugh, don't get me started.
I'll just give a quick. Seymour Cassell cut the garter at our wedding with me and my wife. He got my. I didn't know Seymour. He actually crashed my wedding. Well, some of this movie's impeccably cast, though, in the sense that Charles Durney. That's a fantastic.
Did you see Paul Sorvino?
As a cab driver, yeah.
Damon Wilson.
Right.
Telling you how to get a locker and. So funny, unbelievable.
We ended up on Sanford and Son. About 2 years later.
But Charles Durning, did you run over Charles Durning?
Whoa, there's a story. We were shooting a documentary about Max Clavin, the world's greatest stunt man. And he was driving the car. He said, let me drive. We did a couple of takes and it didn't look real. He said, Max said, let me do it. And you saw the shot where Max does it, and he's supposed to shoot under Charlie as he jumps. But Charlie didn't jump high enough. We actually ran over Charlie.
Terrible.
And we had an ambulance and had to take him to the hospital. And make a long story short, that scene by the
The statutes of limitations have passed. You probably can say whatever you want.
basically they did. Charlie was in the hospital quite some time, but we took him out and propped him up with to do a couple of the shot at the end where he shoots the guy. You know, 4 people.
Oh no!
When he phones it in, says 10-4. That was after the accident too.
Well, this is vaguely related to that, and this is only because I have a sort of a fantasy of what it was like to make movies in the early '70s. How high were you guys?
There was a lot of dope smoking. Never while we were performing at all, but we had a lot of fun. And there was dope, pot smoking, and Scientology. That was Robert was seriously into Scientology, and he proselytized like crazy. And I, who didn't know how to make a movie, I was sort of putting myself into a kind of protege mentorship relationship with him, just to keep things cooking in the scenes.
No wonder I was laughing so much.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you ask me anything about Scientology. On this was in 1971. It's all come out since then.
Just apropos with that, Barbara, I thought that's how you actually made those scenes work, because there was no reality in them other than yours. And so that sort of saved it from. And I thought that was really good. Really good.
You talk in your book, though, about, back to the drug issue, that Barbara brought David Carradine to the set.
Oh.
And he waylaid you for several days or something.
Well, I don't know. The best part of that story is Barbara came to me first and said that David, everybody thought he was a madman and a crazy guy, and it would be all right to bring him to the set. And I said, of course. And I still remember the day he came to the set. I was eating on the, looking at, they were hosing down a polar bear in the suit. I was looking that way. And I looked under my, and I see David's boots coming. And I realized he was there, and everybody was really anticipating David's coming in a big way, And I turned around and I looked at him, and he had these great, sparkling, wonderful eyes. And I liked him very much instantly. And he said, we looked at each other and we smiled, and I said, I like your boots. And he said, I had Birkenstock. I like your sandals. I said, okay, let me wear your boots. He said, you want to switch? Yeah, so anyway, the rest of the day I wore his boots. And he wore my sandals. And it was really kind of a wonderful first meeting.
I'm not getting the mushroom story.
What?
But I'm not getting the mushroom story.
Well, I don't, even Barbara would have, I don't know.
It's in the book. That's what I'm reading.
I have to read this book.
It's a good story.
So, the movie happened. You've made this film. It's your first movie. It's a major. You must have been very excited. What sort of went wrong, or what happened in the reason why people didn't? Yeah, you talk about it in the book also. Press screen or some kind of screening that went very
When
bad.
it opened in Boston, the projectionist deliberately put the reels in the wrong order, and so the film made no sense.
Why did he do that?
Because it was you got to remember the times. A lot of people didn't like dopers and they didn't like marijuana, and this film doesn't make a judgment really. It's let's not get too far into what it does or doesn't do, but the fact is that I think two things. One, they put it totally out of order. Joy Bang was there. Were you there that night? Yeah, we jumped up and said, this makes no sense. This is crazy. The guys have put the film on wrong, and it was just a disaster. that opening in Boston. And then also, I think, frankly, the film is strange enough, and there's some acting problems. I understand why it wasn't a huge hit.
Well, you can never really explain why things succeed and totally fail. But I must say, watching it now, to watch a film made in 1971, this is a lot better than the ones that have supposedly lasted the test of time. Right?
I like the silences in it. I like the time it took to tell the tale, and that you lingered on people and on the scenes. And I also liked the car chase at the end when they're sliding in the ice and turning around. It was just so silly. It was great. There's so many good things in it.
And I hadn't realized that I was the comic relief. I was delighted by that, because I thought he was such a spineless. I'm afraid I sort of betrayed my own contempt for a certain breed of Harvard man. I knew a lot of these guys, and it was a fairly accurate performance.
I liked how frightened he was.
Yeah,
during
he's
the
a
gun
complete
stuff.
coward at the end. And I wish I had said more articulately the line about the flare gun. You use it on boats. Because that joke didn't quite work because I didn't articulate well enough. It didn't quite pay off.
Did you guys actually shoot at Harvard, or where did you guys shoot this thing?
No, in Toronto.
In Toronto.
And I think University of Toronto.
Yeah.
Some campus scenes.
We did shoot in Boston.
Yeah, we went at the
And
end.
in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But this movie changed your life. It actually brought you to Hollywood for the first time.
Honestly,
Right?
didn't you work with Brian?
Yeah, Brian De Palma had a lot to do with, well, the beginning of my career. He had seen me in a summer theater workshop with a bunch of Columbia students, and they were all friends of his. He'd come down to watch an evening of Moliere one acts that I performed in, not unlike the scene that I was directing. And it was a very unsuccessful summer season of plays, but so there was always about one fourth of a house watching these plays. But I remember hearing somebody out there screaming and squealing with laughter at my performance. That was Brian De Palma. He'd come down to see his friends in a Moliere play. And from that moment on, he was always advancing my career. He suggested me, apparently, to you, Paul, and sort of got me going. And then the next film I did after this was Obsession for Brian De Palma. Not only that, but when I was hired to do this, I had no agent at all. And the agent I got, after the film was shot but not yet released, was Rick Nacita at the William Morris Agency, who introduced the film tonight. So full circle.
Indeed. I'm sure some of you out here must have some questions. Is there anybody out here who has a... Yes, you right there.
The film came out in '72, and your next, Mr. Williams, your next feature was 6 years later in '78. So what were you doing during those 6 years?
Well, I do recommend you read the memoir. Very briefly, I was dropping out, studying with the Sufi masters and actually the same teacher as the current Dalai Lama had, who taught me some things. Anyway, so basically I was exiting a serious film career and becoming much more interested in an inner journey. And I really had been all the movies I made that didn't look like I wanted them to look like. That they all, for me, I'm a bad person to see my movies. So anyway, I
But
really
you
wanted...
still kept up with Pressman Williams. I mean, you and Ed Pressman were partners for...
You should read the book on that. I don't want to say anything nasty.
I wasn't expecting him to be so shy.
Truth is, my very first movie, out of it, Ed wanted a guy with a name, Barry Gordon, I love Barry. He's a wonderful actor. He was in 1,000 Clowns. But he's nowhere near the character I wrote. And I found John Voight, some unknown named John Voight. I said, this guy could play me. And they said, uh-uh. So instead of it being a movie about a kind of a powerful, slightly sexual guy who had some moves, it became what it was like a story of a schlep, which is not what I had in mind. But it's okay. I work with what I have to do, so it was not the movie I wanted to make. The next one, lots of bad things happen. So that's why I think Carl Jung said, the first part of life you build up your ego. In the second part of your life, you go inside. And so that's really what I was doing. And when Nunzio came around, I said, oh, well, this is kind of good. I could make a movie about a guy with no ego because he's so retarded, challenged. And that was my idea.
All right, yes.
Barbara, after Dealing, did you make Boxcar Bertha next?
Did you make Boxcar Bertha after Dealing?
I happen to know.
Actually, really, the connection is him and Scorsese were the very first NYU film students.
Yes, well,
correct?
that's the answer to the story, is that Barbara and David came to me and said, look, there's this director, Marty Scorsese. Should we work with him? And I knew Marty really well because we were...
Yes.
And I think he's terrific. You should really work with him.
Chronology, I can never remember the order of movies. I seem to have a memory problem, don't I?
You seem wonderful, thank you. And you right there.
Question for everybody, Ms. Hershey, Mr. Lithgow, Mr. Williams. Was it kind of a loose vibe on the set during the time? Was things kind of a loose environment vibe, or were things pretty structured? They talked about improvisation, but was there some of that in this, or not so much?
The question was there a loose vibe on the set, and I would say yes. Paul was a wonderful director. He just created an atmosphere of everybody coming up with ideas. For me, it was just all so new. I didn't know about close-ups and overs and master shots. Everything was new, and I was quite insecure. I sort of discovered something that I've always resorted to my entire career, which is use your insecurity. That's what you do. It's one of your tools. If you're nervous and frightened at the whole situation, just capitalize on that, and you see it in the performance. But everyone was having a wonderful time. I mean, it was just we even explored Robert. We followed Robert down the Scientology rabbit hole just out of pure curiosity. What in the world is he talking about?
Right. I actually, felt it incumbent on me to learn how he thought before we started working, and so I actually went to certain things, and I'll give you one. Well, it was a problem. It's a problem because I had worked with more with this kind of a Sandy Meisner technique, and this was much more imaginary circumstance. I'm going to do this, and not heavily available for what's really going on. That was a problem.
There is one other performer that I'd love to ask about is Joy Bang, because I'm kind of fascinated by Joy Bang. That's her real name, by the way. It's a 1971 name, but her name was Joy, and she married a guy named Paul Bang, so her name is Joy Bang. Talk about Joy Bang for a second. Played Lithgow's girlfriend in the film. How did she become involved?
Well, she was just delightful, she was a real free spirit. Curiously, I had a little history with Joy. I had cast her ex-husband, Paul Bang, in a play I directed at Harvard. and he bailed on me. I had to replace him. So, and I was not happy about that. And that's completely irrelevant, but that's part of my history with Joy Bang. I liked her better than her ex-husband.
We only have time for a couple more. Way in the back there, I think. Yes.
Okay.
Hi. You all have mentioned how this film is a time capsule for its moment, but I'm interested, what are some of the works and films that influenced you in the making of this film?
What are the movies that influenced you in the making of this movie? What kind of films were you trying? Were you doing Godard? What was the kind of movies that made you want to make this movie?
In all honesty, I just felt that there were certain kinds of behavior I wanted to see that I hadn't seen in other movies, and a certain approach to time and pace and rhythm, which I could use in this movie. The movie itself was a vehicle. You know, I had to make this movie. I get arrested. No, go on.
Well, watching it, I couldn't help thinking about the ending of Shoot the Piano Player. And as I made that connection, it did remind me of Truffaut. I mean, Truffaut at that point was the great discovery, the new...
Yeah, I loved his movies.
Yeah, we were all obsessed with Truffaut in that era.
Right.
Yeah, and the film very much had his sensibility, I think.
You know, it's so strange. My senior year, down at the Carpenter Center, I was teaching photography as an undergraduate. Anyway, so Robert Gardner, who was the head of one week he introduced me to Lenny Riefenstahl, and the next week he introduced me to Jean Renoir, who was giving a speech in the Carpenter Center. And, you know, he made, you know Renoir's movie, The Grand Illusion, or, yeah, okay. So anyway, he said to me, and I had just got, oh, this is terrible. I had just gotten an admission to Harvard Law. I got my letter. And my wife-to-be, Elizabeth, said, I don't want to be married to a lawyer. Down in that very same place, and then an hour later, Jean Renoir saying to me, you know, most people, you make 3 movies, that's all you really have. And then you start repeating yourself. So make sure you live your life in between the movies. Don't make your whole life the movies. And I thought about his movies in terms of Truffaut was the great admirer of Renoir, and said he was like the perfect director because he always found a real solution for things. So yeah.
That really is interesting, like in terms of Kurosawa and in terms of so many directors that you admire, the variety, Kubrick, the variety of films, not just repeating themselves, it's true. And I always thought life is the teacher, life is the fuel, life gives it to you. And those that just go from job to job to job to job, I always think they start repeating themselves. They stop having real feedback with the world. Yeah.
After that bad screening in Boston with the reels on it, were you sort of really nervous about how the world was going to react to this film, or what are you even coming in tonight? Were you worried about how people were going to re-see this film, or what it was? How's this?
It's a very simple answer. It's in the book.
We should have had a signing outside. We had Hollywood fucking posters.
Basically, when I saw how people were going to react to it, I remember I pulled up into the side of Pacific Coast Highway in my van, and I had a nervous breakdown. I saw the world as a geodesic dome with each little thing crumbling. So that's how I react.
All right, one last question. One last good question. Yes, Val, back there.
Hello. The title.
Title.
Yes. Where did it come from? How did it affect the movie? How do you feel about it?
The title, how did it affect the movie, where it kind of came from? It is the title of the Michael Crichton book.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just talking for myself. I think probably absolutely 1,000% affected you have the title that you can. say, like, but no, in all fairness, it's trying to be a Doctor Strangelove, or it's meant to be one of the, people did just refer to this as dealing, but do you think that the title was a problem in terms of the release of the film? Or are there bigger problems than that?
Bigger problems, I think.
Yeah.
Right. I was watching tonight, I thought like, Shootout at Walden Pond. There's a title, that's a title.
I want to say one last thing to Paul.
Yeah.
In seeing this for the first time, I loved how you let me react to the murders. I see so many movies where there's death all around and people don't react at all how people react in life. And that you let me react like that was great. And I really want to thank you for that.
Well, I want to thank you for what I would call bottoming every scene you were in with some reality.
Let's end on that note. Ladies